Okay, we are going to start by applying the fusing to the pocket facing. With the sticky side down, line up your pocket facing pieces. Select a high heat setting on your iron with no steam. Press the iron starting in the middle of the pattern piece, working your way out to the edge, lifting and pressing. Sliding the iron can cause stretching, so lifting and pressing is the best method to use here. Turn your pattern pieces over and trim any excess fusing. Along the long edge of the pocket facing, fold up 1/2 inch seam allowance and press. You can choose to serge along this long edge and forego the pressing entirely. Line up your pocket opening pattern piece with your pocket pattern piece and sew along the short edge at 1/2 inch seam allowance. This is your pocket opening. Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and the end of your seam. Finger press the seam allowance towards the pocket facing and understitch. To do this, we are stitching the seam allowance to the pocket facing close to the seam line, about 1/16 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch away. This keeps the facing from peeking out of the pocket. Okay, bring this over to the ironing board and turn over the pocket facing and press. Trim the excess corners of the facing. To reduce bulk, we are going to trim 1/4 inch of the inner seam allowance along the pocket opening. If you serged along the long edge of the pocket facing, you can leave the pocket as is, catching the edges of the facing in the side seam and the waistband seam. Or you can follow along with me and edge stitch along the folded edge. This will give you a stitch line 1 inch away from the pocket opening. Fold and press 1/2 inch of a seam allowance to the wrong side along the bottom and inner edge of the pocket. Line up the pocket opening with the pocket placement notches on the front shorts pattern piece. Ensure both pieces are facing right side up. Pin as needed. Edge stitch the pocket in place along the bottom and the inner edge of the pocket. The next step is completely optional. Design is in the details. Finish your pocket with a 1/4 inch wide double needle finish. To do this, sew an additional stitch line 1/4 of an inch away from the edge stitch. Side seams and inseams. With right sides together, sew seams with a 1/2 inch seam allowance matching notches. Press the seam open and then press towards the back. Serge the raw edge, these are, after all, the easy shorts, or finish the side seam as desired. Next, we are going to start by pressing up the hem. There are notches on the pattern, but if you've serged them off, you'll be folding up 2.5 inches from the bottom. And press. Unfold the hem and fold up 1/2 inch. Pin it in place and press. This clean finishes your hem, leaving you with a 2-inch hem. Pin it in place if needed, take it to your machine and edge stitch along the folded edge. Moving on to the center back and center front seams. With the right sides together, match up your center front notches and your center back notches, and also your inseams. The easiest way to do this is to have one leg of your shorts inside the other legs of your shorts. Pin in place and sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Again, we're going to press the seam open and then press it to the side. Finish the seam with a serge or however you'd like. Match the center back notches of your waistband, and you've guessed it, sew together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Press the center back seam open and then press to the side. Make sure you're pressing it to the opposite side of the center back seam of your shorts. This will help to reduce bulk at the center back of your waistband. Fold your waistband in half lengthwise and press. On the inside piece of your waistband, we're going to press up 1/2 inch seam allowance. Turn your shorts right side out and match up your center back seam allowances and your center front notches. We are going to attach the waistband to the shorts with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Press the seam allowance up into the waistband. Trim away 1/4 inch of the inside seam allowance. This will reduce bulk. Fold the waistband in half lengthwise and allow the 1/2 inch seam allowance that we previously pressed to sit just past the seam line. With the right sides facing up, we are going to stitch in the ditch of the waistband seam, starting and ending 1 inch or so on either side of the center back seam, making sure to back stitch at the beginning and the end. This opening at the center back seam will be where we insert the elastic band for our waistband. Stitching in the ditch refers to stitching right in a seam line or in the space between the two fabrics of a seam. This is called the ditch. The stitch line will not be seen from the right side or the outer side of the garment, but the inside of the waistband will catch at 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch, securing and closing the waistband. Using a safety pin, thread the elastic through the waistband casing, entering and leaving through the 2-inch opening at the center back seam. Be sure the elastic is not twisted inside the waistband. Once you've pulled the elastic through the entire waistband, I like to pin the two edges of the elastic together and stretch the waistband a few times to evenly distribute the gathers around the shorts. Once that's done, overlap the edges of the elastic by 1 inch and pin them in place. Using a wide set zigzag stitch, sew down the middle of the overlapped elastic. Be sure to go back and forth many times to secure the elastic. Next, we're going to sew the center back opening closed. Match your center back seams and pin in place. Stretch when you sew, but be careful not to stretch your fabric past its point of natural elasticity. We are going to again stitch in the ditch and backstitch at both ends. You can choose to leave the waistband as is. However, to prevent the elastic from twisting inside as you wear your shorts, I recommend a vertical stitch at each of the side seams to secure the elastic band in place. Or you can continue following along the tutorial and finish your shorts as I did. Sew 1, 2, or 3 additional stitch lines down the center of your waistband. Space these stitch lines evenly, 5/8 of an inch apart as I did, or spaced however you desire. Just as we did when we closed the center back opening, we're going to stretch the fabric and the elastic as we sew, being careful not to stretch the fabric past its natural point of elasticity. And there you have it. For more tutorials, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.